Hello. So this adventure starts where many of the more interesting purchases people have made over the years starts on this site here. So right at the beginning of the summer of 2019, I was looking to replace my existing mixer. Now, this was always going to be a temporary solution for the studio, and while it looks okay, it unfortunately has very little headroom. It's quite noisy to use, and the effects buses and some of the channels slowly break over time. So after this, it was time to buy a real console. Now, I wanted something with individual channel strips, so if a channel died, I could just take it out, repair it, put it back in, and we'd be back up and running. Consoles these days, especially big consoles, have become incredibly cheap. This is partially down to the fact that an analog console just is not as flexible as modern digital consoles, and of course the amount of space they take up in a studio. So after a few months of searching, I came across this, which is a Sound Workshop Series 30 console. Now, Sound Workshop was put together by a bunch of people that left the API company, and they formed their own company and started creating these modern consoles, or at least they were modern at the time. So this really piqued my interest, but the listing was more money than I actually wanted to spend. There were other consoles available that might have been not quite as good, and this console was definitely at the very high end. Now, as you can see, it's had a bit of time where the console's been down, it's been out of action, and with any electronics that have been turned off for a very long time, it means bringing them back to working life is going to be a very difficult task. So obviously this console is a lot of work, and like I said, the price just didn't make it worthwhile. So I kept looking for the next few months, and of course this console just continued to be there on eBay in the background. I kept having a look back at it, and eventually decided to message the owner and see if I could get some more pictures. So when I got the rest of the pictures, it tended to look a little more looked after than it initially did on the photos, and I found the current owner was open to offers. So after a bit of negotiation and the owner agreeing to actually deliver the console for me, I made the purchase. So the console's arrived, and this is what I'm going to be working on for the next few months. It seems in fairly decent shape. As you can see, there's a few rips and tears in the front part of the console. The channel strips and everything look to be in reasonable condition. There's a strange shelf built under the console, not sure what that was for. The seller, while she was delivering the console, mentioned that it used to belong to our national broadcaster here in Australia and was used by many famous musicians at the time, created a lot of programs, so it's got a bit of history. So looking at the console stand, this is where it's really starting to show a bit of age. You can see there's a lot of rust there. That makes me a little nervous because where there's rust, there's obviously been water. The power supply and the meter bridge supply here. The power supply I had an intention of rebuilding, but the owner said that it probably wouldn't need it, so I thought I'd power it up first and see how we went. So obviously consoles aren't supposed to live in people's garages, and it was really important, as we're at the tail end of summer here, that I really need to get it all inside as soon as possible before we start getting storms, rain, a lot of wind and various other things. So I started doing the teardown on the same day that the console arrived. You can see here I'm taking a lot of photos. This is to act as memory aids later. I mean, there's so many strips, there's so much cabling that there's no way I'm going to keep this in my memory. So here I'm just hoping I can take the bottom part of the mix bus off, but as you can see, it's got a lot of cables running internally as well. I just didn't feel comfortable unplugging absolutely everything at this stage. So I'm just disconnecting the channel feeds that are going into the mix bus, and then I'll remove the mix bus itself. So I tried to group as many of the cables that connected to the similar areas as possible. It just turned out to be pretty futile, and I'll have to just figure out how this all fits together once I've got the channel strips and the mix bus up and running. So finally free, that's the first part done. So now time to start removing the channel strips. So the previous owner had already done one of the strips to show what the condition was in the photos. So this one was really easy to get out of the console. The rest of them have about 7 different cables running to them, and they're a bit of a pain to get out, but not too bad.